Good afternoon. My name is Butch Bateman. I'm on the board of directors of the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County. Today is September 21st, 2011, and we are very pleased today to have a fourth generation Montgomery County resident. Mr. Joe Corley is joining us today to talk about his life and the way things used to be in Montgomery County. Mr. Corley, let me shake your hand.
I'm glad to be here.
It's my pleasure to be talking with you today.
Thank you.
Please start with your family history. Where did your family come from? Where did you locate?
Well, my family came from Burnt Corn, Alabama to Madisonville County in the 1880s and soon thereafter migrated to Montgomery County. I was born up north of Montgomery about 10 to 12 miles, kind of in the middle of the National Forest. I grew up there. My family ranched and had cattle. My daddy never worked any public job. He made a living on a farm all of his life.
So raised cows, sold cows.
He raised cows. There was no stock law, and we had a lot of cows in the Sam Houston National Forest and on our own private land and little land leased occasionally here and there. Yeah. But and he farmed a small amount and just like most country people would do then, big garden. Yep. Raised some food for the livestock and had cattle that he sold. The only place we could sell then was at the Port City Stockyards in Houston. No auction sales like there are in every town now, so we had to ship all of our cattle down to Houston to Port City.
Did you take them yourselves, or was there a service that took them?
There was 2 or 3 people over at Montgomery that had bobtail trucks with the cattle frames on it, and they do all the commercial hauling. Sometime Daddy would let me, when I was a kid, ride the cattle truck to Houston and back. That was a really big deal to me.
So this was when you were a young man. How young are you now?
I'm 72.
72 years old. So you grew up on a working ranch?
I did. I started following my daddy horseback working cattle when I was 5 years old, and I thought by the time I was 40, probably nobody in this area had ridden a horse any more than I had.
Probably so.
I mean, we rode horses and worked cattle 5 days a week.
Yeah, yeah. The home that you grew up in, you told me earlier, you had no electricity when you were 5 years old.
I remember the days of the kerosene lamps. I started to school when I was 5 years old. My daddy and I were out at a sawmill in Richards, and he ran into the superintendent, and he asked my daddy, said, is this boy old enough to go to school? Richard was struggling to keep a full 12th grade accreditation, and they needed kids. And Daddy told him, no, I wasn't but 5. He said, well, he's big enough, have him out here.
Send him to school.
Send him to school. So I started and I was 5, and they changed my birth date a little bit and got me in. And
how did you get to school?
I rode a school bus. We rode a school bus. I had to walk about a quarter of a mile in the summertime or when the roads was good, but in the wintertime, we walked about 2 miles. All of us, a bunch of kids that lived out in that community met up there about 2 miles from where I live, and we walked there to catch a bus.
The bus couldn't come up to
where the roads so bad they couldn't get around him, and I can't tell you how many times we've had to get out as us boys and push the school bus. We'd be stuck.
Now, why were you stuck? Was there no paved roads?
Oh, no paved roads, and they were awful. Mud. I mean, it in the wintertime from where we lived back to Montgomery was impossible. Only my daddy and my grandfather, my mother's daddy, would hook up 4 horses to a wagon about once a month and go to Richards and get groceries. Roads were terrible in the wintertime. I mean, in the summertime they were rough, but but passable.
That was passable. Yeah. So here you are, young man now going to school. When did you get electricity?
1949. I was 10 years old. I was born in 39, and my daddy was one of the original members of the Mid-South Co-op. They needed 100 people to put up $100 each to form a co-op. And my daddy and mother and our neighbor and his wife went in a wagon up to community center and at the meeting that night. I remember it very well, and they all signed up, and that was the end results, that they formed a co-op, and we got electricity then in 49.
In 49. So you continued to go, and this was in Richards now, you're in school in Montgomery?
Richards. I went to Richards in school. 2/3 of our land is in the Montgomery School District, and 1/3 in Richards.
Okay.
But the school bus came closer to my house than the Richard bus, and so that's how I made the decision what school I'd go to.
Is that still the case in where your home is now?
Yeah, it is.
It's in Richards.
My home is in Richard District, and maybe 200 yards east of me, the Montgomery District starts.
Oh, okay. So you're
On our property.
You're 10 years old. You're a cowboy. You're going to school. Where are you from 10 years old? You graduated from Richards High School in Richards. How many kids were in the school? You remember?
Yeah, about 115 total.
Total in the school.
I thought it was very interesting. We were then a Class B school. There's no such thing anymore, but
Right.
then, and we were in District 74B. Our district consists of Richards, Montgomery, Magnolia, Klein, Spring, and Willis.
My gosh.
That was District 74B. We won district my junior and senior year and went on to the regional playoffs. And I'm the only person who's ever gotten a full 4-year scholarship to a college to play sports.
So you played football?
And I played, no, we didn't play anything but basketball and baseball.
Oh, okay.
And
No
I got a
football
scholarship to go to Sam Houston and play basketball. 1956. So I started in 56 and went through 60 at Sam Houston. Majored in agriculture, and I met a lady from Willis, Texas, who I married as quick as I could. So
That may be the smartest thing you ever did.
that's the smartest thing I ever did.
I think so. I think so. Well, her name is Judy, and she's in the room with us today. If we make a mistake or we say something wrong, I'm sure she's going to correct us and let us know what the right answer is.
She will. She's good at that.
Well, I'm sure she is. Oh, there you go. Sam's taking her picture. So, during those years in Richard schools, what happened when you got sick? Where did y'all go for medical? What was the infrastructure like in those years?
Well, there was a family doctor had a practice there in Richards. In fact, my daddy and mother tell me that when I was born, my daddy rode a horse to Richards and led a horse, an extra horse, and the doctor rode the extra horse back out to the house and spent the night, and I was born. He continued to practice medicine locally there in Richards, just a family doctor. I mean, if you was sick, you got quinine and later a shot of penicillin. That's about as far as it got.
Yeah.
But I guess the closest hospital to us that was accessible was Navasota. We didn't come back to Conroe much to the doctor. We went to Navasota.
Yeah, I think many people, unless you're looking at a map, maybe don't understand where Richards is compared to Conroe in the south. You're in the very northwest?
I'm as far in the northwest part of Montgomery County. That's where I grew up.
That's
in
right.
the very northwest part of the county.
So your homestead and where you live now is actually closer to the city of Navasota.
Yeah, I'm 19 miles from Huntsville and 25 miles from Huntsville and 25 miles from Conroe. Actually, Huntsville was the closest, but the best roads went back toward Navasota. We could get there, and so that's most of the people that use the doctors in Navasota. But I was born at home, and I guess I'm the only child.
You were the only child?
Only child.
Okay.
My daddy and mother were older when they married, and I'm it. So.
Good. So, got a scholarship at Sam Houston up in Huntsville?
I did.
Was that was a 4-year school then?
It was a 4-year school,
Okay.
and I majored in agriculture. And
Yeah.
I came out, and we got married as a young couple, and I first, I guess, worked for a Mobile Oil Company. Had a seismograph office in Navasota. They were seismographing, and I went to work for them. And then they moved it to Conroe, and I continued to work for them until they left Conroe and left to go to Louisiana. I resigned and didn't follow them to Louisiana, but.
Joe, give us an idea. We've heard you talk about the roads, the lack of medical facilities. what was the overall, here we are in 2011, you know, if you look back and you think, oh my gosh, the county has done, what's the biggest change you've seen between a 10-year-old and a 72-year young'un?
Gosh, it'd be hard to say what the biggest change. I've seen so many changes. Our county was, you know, Conroe was the hub of our county. My daddy was friends with people down here, and he was a election judge for, I don't know, 30, 40 years in his voting box up there. And so he was involved politically. And I always, I've seen so many changes, I don't know how to say. I guess transportation would be the first. 149 from Montgomery to Richard was the first FM road in our area of the county. And it literally got us out of the dark.
Yeah.
And T.J. Peel became commissioner prior to that, and it was during his time that he got 149 money appropriated through the state to build 149, and it just opened our whole community up.
Right.
Then we could go back to Conroe and to where you know, got some transportation, but it wasn't. It was really pretty bad until then.
You said earlier you went in a wagon, you know, on a dirt road.
I remember my daddy and my grandpa going to Richard wagon get groceries, you know, and it was because of bad roads.
And that's something. So transportation. Yeah. So okay, you've gotten married now. You're back in Richards. You're still farming, still ranching.
I worked for Texas Department of Corrections for a couple of years, and my father-in-law, her dad was Perry Williams, was a successful electrical contractor. And during that time, a lot of Conroe was really getting in the boom, and he was wiring and building and doing a lot of electrical work. And I thought at one time he offered me the opportunity to go in business with him. That just wasn't my life. Mm-hmm. I worked for him a while, and a man called me one morning or one night at home and said, "I'm George Journay. I would like to meet you at Hotel Conroe and eat lunch with you." I said, "That would be fine, but I don't know what you look like." I didn't never seen him, never heard of him. Somebody had given my name and recommended him. They were wood contractors and ranching, and they were going to divide up the two divisions and separate the wood business, the pulpwood business, from the ranching. And somebody given my name to recommended me to be interviewed for the ranch manager position. So I met him here in Hotel Conroe, and I was working for my father-in-law and was in Conroe every day. And the end results of that conversation that day was I went to work for him in 1966.
Okay.
And we stayed there and worked for him 12 years.
So part of this was the cow business, was ranching. They also were pulpwooders.
They separated the pulpwood business, and I never had anything to do with
so
pulpwood.
You were just
they had a ranch in South Texas and one in Montgomery County, and they had a 700 mother cow operation, and they were wonderful people to work for. I ate lunch at home every day. I had to have one of the most prestigious jobs in this county. They furnished me a pickup. It was just a dream come true for us.
I bet you got to do what you knew how to do.
My son got to go kill a deer in South Texas when he was 9 years old, and just had opportunities as a family. We all would go down there together, and they had a nice bunkhouse on the ranch, and we'd stay a week at a time. And our kids got to do things that kids today just don't have the opportunity to do. Yeah.
So this where you were ranch foreman, this was around Richards.
Actually the headquarters is at Dacus, which is in Montgomery County, but between Richards and Dobbin. Okay. That was where the ranch headquarters. They had 2,600 acres there.
Okay. So this is now, you're in the 60s?
In the 60s.
Okay. So Conroe is got an interstate highway out here now instead of old 75.
It was. I had allergies when I was 17, 18, began to develop asthma when I was a young man. The doctor in Navasota said, recommended I go to an allergy specialist in Houston. So I would drive to Houston to the doctor. And I would drive old 75, but at that time they had right-of-way for Interstate 45 cleared. It looked like a half a mile across the right-of-way, and I thought, what in the world would they ever do with that much road? I couldn't believe that was for a road.
And now look at it.
Now they've added to it about 3 or 4 times since
Now
then
it's
or
like
more, you know.
10 acres a mile or something.
Yeah, it is, sure is.
Yeah. Interesting. So at some point now you've ranched, you've made a good living, you have some children during these years.
We had 3 children, and
Right.
we moved to Dacus in '66, and our kids. My son started school that fall, as I recall, and then we had a little girl that started a couple of years or 3 years later.
Okay.
And April came along a little bit later in our life, and so all of my kids graduated from Richard School.
Okay. When did you start teaching?
Montgomery School.
Montgomery School, I'm sorry.
Montgomery. When did you start teaching?
Let me think, April was
69, I believe.
69?
well, 82 was when I went back. I had worked for Montgomery before.
Right.
You was working when I got elected school board.
Yeah,
Okay.
but then I didn't work for a while, and I went to work then the last time in 82.
Okay.
And worked continuously till she retired.
Yeah.
So Conroe's growing, we've got an interstate highway system, they've built new schools.
Yeah.
You told me earlier that you became involved in the local school district.
I did. I ran for school board in 1970 and was elected and served 6 years. And,
This is Montgomery.
at Montgomery, at
Right.
the Montgomery School District. We were in a major, I guess, transition from a rural school district to a what's now a large school district. Walden and April Sound, Lake Conroe was under construction but hadn't been completed, and those developments were coming along around the lake. And when I first came on the school board, railroad and the pipeline were our 2 biggest taxpayers, but it soon became Walden.
Yep.
And all the development came along, and so I saw our district make some major changes, and
Well, you did. You saw it convert from the
convert
rural.
to rural, and it met the needs very well of our district at the time. But they made some good preparations for the growth that came along later, and it's a fine district today.
Yep. So 6 years and was on the school board, still working as a ranch foreman?
I was.
Okay.
I was still ranch foreman. I worked. We only met once a month, so I mean it didn't take
This
a lot.
was you said it was an unpaid?
An unpaid position,
Unpaid.
and it was a 3-year term, so I was elected twice
Okay.
for the school board, and we had a first-term commissioner in our precinct where I live that I thought couldn't be reelected. I didn't know if I had read the political climate well in our precinct, but I thought that somebody else was going to be commissioner. And I remember James Price gave me the first money that I ever received. He gave me a $100 check. He said, I want to contribute to your campaign, but you know that Oak Ridge North and Magnolia and Deckers Prairie is going to decide the election, not Montgomery. How are you going to figure on getting any votes down there? So he said, you go down there and work, and the home folks will take care of you up here. So there were 5 of us. There were other people, obviously, beside me thought he couldn't be elected. There were 5 of us in the race, and
Wow.
I came out the high man, and the incumbent was second, and we were in a runoff, and it was the runoff was pretty easy. It was apparently a done deal.
Was it?
And so I became commissioner. I was elected in 1976. And
Now that precinct is changed somewhat. has
it has.
not?
They
Where it is today.
redistrict in the 80 when the new census information, or 81 when the new census came out. But this is based on the 70 census, and precinct 3 then consisted of River Plantation all the way down 45 to Spring Creek on both sides of the freeway, Oak Ridge and the Woodland side. And then it went out to the Oklahoma community, Deckers Prairie, Magnolia, Montgomery.
Right.
So when I left 4 years later, I had 32% of the population of this county in Precinct 3.
Interesting.
And it's where all the growth was. When I became commissioner, on 1488, which is now a concrete 4-lane road, the only thing between Magnolia and I-45 was the old Superior office building out there that the county later one time leased, but that was all it was. Yeah. And all of those developments of Westwood and all of those that are up and down were platted during my time. I mean, they weren't built out, but they were platted. Even the Jacobs property was platted.
So this was mostly all of South County?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all of South County from
And
RP on.
And now that area is in 2 precincts?
It is.
Okay.
You know, they've since divided it. I used to kid Ed Chance and tell him, you're going to eventually have a precinct so small you can't turn a truck around there.
So you mentioned a new city during your tenure as commissioner that we all know is called the Woodlands. Please give us a little idea what that did to the county, what it did for the infrastructure and the movement, working with Mr. Mitchell.
Of course, I wasn't involved in it, but I observed the Conroe School District changing and the power structure of the Conroe District changing so much during that time. Excuse me. It being, the Woodlands came along and during the time that there was all of the, I guess, surplus money and all those grants that became available for those new communities, and so much money was pumped into it. And Mr. Mitchell knew how to do that. And when I took office in '76 as county commissioner, the Woodlands was 3 years old. Basically, it was made up then of Woodlands employees. They were just getting it off the ground. And I told you earlier that Mr. Mitchell called me one day and said, we've gotten a grant for a red light on Woodlands Parkway in Grogan Mill. I said, well, that's fine, Mr. Mitchell, but I wouldn't have a clue what to do with it. And so he said, well, we knew you didn't. Said, we've already got you a contract with Fenway to repair it if it breaks down. You just call them.
Right. And
of course, before I left, there were a number of others, but that was the first red light on a county road in Montgomery County. And the rest of it's history. We know what's happened now. Talking to our current sheriff recently, and they've now got 95 deputies in the substation in the Woodlands.
The Woodlands now is 60 or 70,000 or more?
Yeah, probably close to 100.
Probably close to 100,000.
Yeah,
so in your life, in your tenure, you basically saw a new city.
I did. I saw a new city spring up in our county that erased the fact that Conroe was a political hub of our county.
That's right.
I was the first sheriff ever elected west of the San Jacinto River. Conroe had been the hub of politics, and we used to jokingly say when Box 20, which was they voted at the old library, and that was North Conroe.
Right.
When that box come in, you could tell who's going to win the countywide election, because Cleo McLean lived in North Conroe, and if you were on the good side of him and the Grogans and the Othel Reeves and just a handful of those guys, you were in. If you wasn't, you were out.
Yeah.
That's just the way it was. But I saw that political structure of our county change drastically in the late '70s and early '80s. When Woodland sprang up and they began to elect school board members on Conroe. Y'all remember that well.
That's right.
And no longer was Conroe the real, political, I guess, dominating part of our county.
That's an interesting. So from the Woodlands now, you've been from the school board, you've been county commissioner.
Yes, sir.
And then you decided to change flavors, and you took a different job.
Don Buckaloo was president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Conroe at the time, and so they had a couple of at-large positions that the chamber president appointed each time. So he appointed me as one of those directors of the chamber here in Colorado.
Right.
So I think it was '79. Don said, when the chamber meeting is over, there's some of us guys would like to talk to you. It was Max Mahaffey was there, and John Burge, and Don, and I don't remember all of them. And I tell you, he told me that before the meeting. I was a nervous wreck. The whole meeting, I thought, what have I done to make all these people
What
mad?
have you done wrong?
And so when the meeting was over, Sheriff Reeves was retiring. He'd been sheriff here 20 years.
That's Otha Reeves.
Oh, no, Gene.
Gene sorry,
Reeves.
Gene
And he was really such a personal friend of my family. And I've said jokingly a lot of times, if I'd have been running, Gene Reeves been on the ballot, my daddy probably voted for Gene Reeves. That's how much he thought of him. But they said, Gene's retiring. We'd like for you to consider running for sheriff. There was already a guy who had announced that kind of a Houston background, and they didn't like that idea. And so I said, I got to talk to my family about this before I get off into this. So I did. My wife and I talked about it, and I'm kind of, it don't, when you get in politics and get a taste of it, the politicians always say, all these people wanted me to do this. It don't take but one, to ask you to run, you'll jump right into it. But
you were keen to do it.
So anyway, I agreed to run, and I ran as a Democrat, and that was the year Ronald Reagan was elected, and against all odds, I should have lost. It was a Republican sweep. The people that in this county had to vote for President Reagan, and then move down to me and move over on the other side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And it was a miracle. I give God credit for that, because I had a lot of people helping me and working for me,
Sure.
but I was supposed to lose but a one. And then I later changed parties. So I served as sheriff the next 12 years.
Explain to future generations that'll be watching this video, in your life, Montgomery County was what the dominated political party was the dominant party.
Yeah, it was Democratic. There was no Republican elected. As I recall, 1980, Al Rose and the lady in South County, Pat Ruffin. Pat Ruffin and Al Rose were elected as Republican office holders in this county, and that was the first probably since Reconstruction.
Oh my God.
And that changed drastically until today. We have no Democratic office holders in our county.
That's right.
They're all Republican. Roy Harris was the last countywide. I was next to the last, and he was the last countywide office holder elected as a Democrat. And so our county is it's always been a conservative county, and the people I knew were very conservative. But the old yellow dog Democrat that my daddy and our family is identified with is not the Democratic Party today.
That's right.
And so all those people became Republicans.
That's right. Yeah, because part of that, the county changed, the infrastructure changed. There was a lot of wealth came into the county.
And a lot of white collar people who moved in our county that commuted to Houston and worked, and they had a different political philosophy maybe than
It's odd in some ways because the Conroe oil field came in 31. So from 31 up until Reagan came up, that was all Democrats.
And the Conroe oil field basically financed our county from that 31 until, I know even after I got on the Commissioner's Court in 76, we would jokingly say, let's go meet and divide up Exxon's money and go home. Mm-hmm. That's basically who financed our county. It was the oil field. And they unitized that oil field in the mid 70s, probably 78 or something like that as I recall. And Exxon took over the management of all the production out there. And they hired a man by the name of Jack Fightmaster, who was their I guess CPA or I don't know, his finance advisor, one of theirs,
Right.
who was the liaison between them and the commissioner's court. And he came and told us, looked us right in the eye, and he said, you know, we've been paying the bill, but we couldn't stop it.
Oops.
And so that tax burden began to shift from the oil field to lots and houses.
Yeah. In that era, Joe, did you have property tax?
We had a property tax, but it was very cheap.
Low.
Very cheap, very low. And it was the days that we all remember we'd sometime like go back to, wouldn't we?
I bet, yeah. So it shifted from that era of the oil company, ExxonMobil, paying most of the bills to having to raise the property taxes.
Peavy toll bill was I think 78 if I recall. When I was commissioner, we were still the Board of Equalization. We met and heard for weeks at a time in the summer and heard disgruntled taxpayers or people who had legitimate complaints
Yep.
about their appraisals, and which many of them were legitimate. The Peavy toll bill went into effect, and part of that created the appraisal district. And so we'd have one central appraiser. Up to that time, the Conroe School District may have your land owned at $500 an acre, and the county have it on at $300. And a lot of discrepancies.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
So it created one district, all appraised by one entity, and then everybody uses that appraisal to set their tax rate and collect taxes.
So how long were you sheriff?
12 years.
12 years.
Gene Reeves, when I became sheriff, he had 101 employees. But I thought interesting that Ms. Reeves, 10 of those 20 years he was sheriff, cooked the food for the inmates in the jail.
I didn't know that.
You could not book anybody in the jail at night unless you called up there and woke Mr. Bigsby up. He was a night jailer, and he slept in the jail. If you made an arrest, you had to call him on the phone and get him to get up and come downstairs and unlock the elevator so you could. I remember those days.
Bring a prisoner in.
Did and
That's when it was in the courthouse, Joe? Was the jail in the courthouse?
Yeah, it was. When I became sheriff, we had the two top floors of the courthouse as jail. And we could legally house 42 inmates. There were 50 beds up there. But the state of Texas tells us that you got to leave 10% of your beds vacant for classification purposes. Well, I became sheriff in 80, and it wasn't very long until on almost any given Sunday morning we'd have 125 or 30 up there. And I got a call from the jail commission, who is the state agency that regulates the sets of jail standards and enforces them for county jails around the state. And I got a call that I needed to come to Austin and explain our operation. Well, I knew that wasn't going to turn out well. I went and I sat down before the commission, and they knew more about the jail than I did. I could tell that they'd done their homework. So quickly they made a motion to close the Montgomery County Jail. And I thought, I'm a new sheriff, they'll give me time. Don't blame me for the past administration.
Right.
Give me time to make some changes. Well, the motion failed on account of Jack Hurd. He was on the commission. He represented the large counties. There were two sheriffs on the commission.
Okay.
And he told them, said, this boy's new. He's adjoining county to our Harris County, and I know him, and said, he'll do the right thing if y'all give him a chance. So the motion died, and for like a second, and I came home and knowing that something big had to happen in Montgomery County. There wasn't any choice. I was going to either have to bus prisoners and rent bed space in another county, or build a jail. And so we called, had not been a countywide bond issue passed in Montgomery County in 40 years.
Oh my gosh.
2 road bond issues had just failed not long before then, and people told me, said, you can't pass a bond issue. We had the tax rollback. when the citizens signed a petition, took it to vote, and the people voted to roll the taxes back. They said, you can't pass a bond issue. So I said, we've got to. So I got my secretary to make a list of every civic club, every civic organization in this county. And I began to make appointments for those people to speak. And I know one particular day, I remember my secretary said, do you know you've got 5 appointments for today? I made that same speech 5 times. We went all up, we crisscrossed this county. We formed a citizens committee, and Gerald Crow headed up the Speakers Bureau, and obviously I couldn't do it all by myself. And we crisscrossed this county for about 3 or 4 months, just being very honest with the people. Didn't try to paint it up, the road bikers were buying ads in the Conroe Courier. A guy sitting up in jail watching TV with his legs propped up, calling his mama on the phone, said, I've never had it so good. They really fought us.
It twisted the truth a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, so it passed. And we built a new facility that's, and we opened it, I believe, in 1987. And it took us about 2.5 years from time we actually hired an architect until we actually got it completed and was able to use it. And it had 800 beds. I negotiated with the United States Marshal's Office, and they furnished money for 200. It was the original county jail was 600 beds. The Marshal Service paid for 200 beds with federal money, and we had a contract with them, so to house their prisoners. So we ended up with 800 beds.
My God.
I left 12 years later. The day I retired, we had 810 in that jail. We filled it up that quick.
Does that say anything about our society?
Of course, the commissioners were good to me, and the more police officers, the more arrests you make. And,
that's right. More people you catch.
That's that. And so, we had a lot of. I had 342 employees when I left, and 101 when I started. So
you must have seen your budget more than double. Yeah,
I had about $11 million budget when I left, and $1 million when I started. So. Now the sheriff's budget is $40 million. Shocking, isn't it?
It is shocking. Well, again, it goes to the fact, as you and I've said, this county has seen tremendous growth.
It has.
In your life, in my short life, this county and cities associated with Montgomery County have done nothing but grow. So obviously that's the tail that wags the dog is when you go from 1 million to 11 million. That's quite remarkable.
We've been so fortunate in this county to have some really good people serving in elected offices, and the present court, I just take my hat off to them for. I mean, none of us like to spend money, but you have to meet the growth that comes along in our county like this one. We were the fastest growing county in the United States at one time, and I'm sure today we're right in the top 2 or 3 in the state of Texas. And when find yourself in that position, there's just some needs you got to meet.
That's right. Well, your generation, you were the visionaries that saw what was happening to the county. You saw the new subdivisions, the new homes, all the new kids. All these people had to be taken care of.
Mickey Dyson was county judge, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of the court who appointed him county judge. Lynn Coker was county judge when I took office, and he was promoted to district judge.
Right.
Left a vacancy to county judge, and we appointed Mickey. We bought a piece of land over there a block away from the courthouse, and was highly criticized for what in the world was the county got in the business doing buying land around the courthouse and the Conroe. What are y'all trying to do? Well, it didn't look bad. It looked bad now. I'm not saying that they weren't right at the time, but it turned out to be really good. We issued a setback line on 105, saying you can't build within a certain distance of the center line of the road. We didn't own it, but we could control what happened on it. Right. This Highway 105 widening would have cost probably 3 times as much money
Oh, of course.
If we'd have had to buy structures along that right of way, and we put that setback line on it, and when finally the money came along to widen it like it is now, they didn't have to buy all the buildings that would have been there had it not happened.
So again, you talked about transportation earlier. In your career, you saw the Interstate 45, you've seen 105 go, especially Conroe West is now 5-6 lanes in some places going west, and now Conroe has a loop.
They do. 2 loops.
2 loops, that's right. 2 loops.
I was on the commissioner's court, and Mr. Doug Alley was a county commissioner here in Conroe. Every court meeting, he would say, we had the north loop built.
Yeah.
He'd have a parcel of land somebody donated for the south loop. Boy, we got to get this south loop going. I thought, I got so tired of hearing about the south loop, but Mr. Doug was right.
Yeah.
Had he got a lot of that land, Camp Strake, and a lot of those people donated that land around that loop. Mm-hmm. And he was instrumental in that happening. Yeah. It wouldn't be there. It wouldn't have happened if it had not been for him, right, like it did. Because
of growth, because of people came cars.
Yeah.
And you had to have a means of getting people around the city.
So it's when we, I built the last farm to market road in Montgomery County. 2854 went west and dead ended at Kincaid Road, and it turned into a county asphalt road. The state had set the money aside, but the county's responsibility is to buy the right of way. And the commissioner would not buy the right of way. So they're sitting there with allocated funds, but no right of way to build the road. So immediately when I took office, I hired J.W. Simpson here in Conroe, local attorney, and he bought the right of way for us. And and then the money that they had set aside wouldn't build the road.
Inflation had caught up with you.
Inflation had come along, but thank goodness for John Holsworth, who was our resident engineer. He went out and found some money, and we got the rest.
Engineer found some money, huh?
He confiscated some money from somebody.
From some other fund, huh?
So we got the road built and extended 2854 out to 105.
Right.
And they did away with that program after that. It's not that I was so wonderful I built the last one. They axed the FM. There isn't a farm to market road fund anymore. So,
I mean, Joe, you've seen again in your life and your career the money is just, it must be, you have to sit and smile at where it was and where it is today.
Sometimes it just blows my mind to have a conversation like you and I are having right now, and you just forget sometimes how many changes that you've really seen in your lifetime in 70 years, and I can probably remember 65 of those pretty well.
That's right.
And it is an amazing thing to see what's happened to our county.
Well, we've said before, in my opinion, we're truly blessed to have grown up in Montgomery County and Richards and Conroe, to have seen what we've seen, to help people, for this county to grow, to be so close to downtown Houston. And now we have medical facilities that are as good as some in downtown Houston. We don't have to go to the Texas Medical Center.
That's right.
So much anymore because of the people now that are in Montgomery County.
Well, our county, I'm not a world traveler, but I know something about I guess the metropolitan areas of our state. And let me tell you, Montgomery County, in my opinion, is the best place to live in the state of Texas. I'm probably biased, and I admit that, but based on what we have here and the citizens have, I don't know, and nobody can match up to us.
Yeah. Well, it's you talk about the veterans of World War II being the best generation. That holds true with you and your generation also. You were the vision to help us be where we are today. And obviously the leaders now will follow that vision because this place is going to continue to grow.
Oh, it is. And we, I sat and listened just recently to a presentation by the executive director of the Greater Houston Development Corporation. Talked about what we could expect in the next 20 years in our county, and I left that meeting scared to death. I thought, how in the world, you know, that if our population doubles in the Golden Triangle of Texas, from San Antonio to Houston to Dallas,
Yep. Right now, I
how
think
can we meet those needs?
we interviewed Judge Sadler, and there's like approximately 500,000 in the county, and the prediction in the next 20 years is the population will double, and we could have 1 million people in Montgomery County. That would make Houston, the metroplex of Houston, probably the second biggest. You know, we could have that kind of growth.
Well, the beautiful part about our county, we got the best of the best from Harris County. You know,
That's right.
People moved out here, the people who were white collar, good, educated, intelligent people, and they've been a big part of it.
That's right.
The new people have been, it's just not the old generation. The new people that come here stepped up to the plate and really has had an important part in making our county what it is today. You know, I work very closely with the people in the Woodlands, and I realized that they were looking out for a bottom line. But you know, some of those people have really made a big contribution to the betterment of our county and our growth of our county. So it's a combination of everybody.
That's right.
Who made it what it is.
People in this county and in the political arena and the administration, they care about where they live, and it shows, I think.
I agree.
Okay. As we get ready to close, Joe, you're talking here to people that 3, 4, 5, 10 years from now are going to look at this and hear you and I talk about things were in the past. Do you have any message you'd like to relay to people about when they struggle or what they should be thinking for their generation?
Well, you know, I'm not for sure what kind of message. I know that based on history, there's people in our county, and I know some of them. I know they'll step up as the need comes along, and as the need arises, and meet that need. You know, we've got a county that's grown. We're creating a lot of jobs now in our county.
We are.
Everybody doesn't have to drive to Houston like they did in the 70s and early 80s. You know, we're creating a tax base in doing that. Our road system is being designed to meet some of those needs when our population is 1 million people.
Right.
So, you know, our churches play an important part in all of our community. So it's a whole. I have all the confidence in the world that this county would meet the needs that it needs to meet in the future.
Well, part of that confidence comes from your era, your generation, and your life, and your contribution to the county and to the citizens here.
Well, I appreciate that. Before I close, can I say one thing about my family that I didn't say? And I would. It's something that I would want people to know. And my wife and I married in July the 3rd of 1959. She was a little old girl from Willis, Texas. One time in the history of this county, you may remember, they had a beauty pageant here in Conroe called, it was an oil queen. They crowned an oil queen in Montgomery County. And each school district submitted, I guess, candidates for that position. My wife was elected oil queen in this county. So, you know, I don't know if she was the last one. That's like 1950, we think 8.
58?
But
before.
But what I really wanted to say about her, she has a pedigree second to none, and I'm proud of that. She wouldn't tell you that, but her grandmother was a Farwell, Josie Lee Farwell, and she became a member of the Daughters of the American Colonists by tracing Henry Farwell and Olive Welby back to Boston, England, where they married in 1629.
Oh my God.
And they came to the colonies in Boston, now what's Boston, Massachusetts, 9 years later in 1638. Then they had a Jonathan Farwell, a descendant, who was wounded at the Battle of Bunker Hill, so that made her eligible for the Daughters of the American Revolution. But fast forward with me to the 1880s. The Farwells had migrated on some to Texas. She has a good bit of family buried at Goliad. But our state capitol burned in in the 1880s, burned to the ground. Texas was broke and had no money. So two men by the name of John and Charles Farwell financed the construction of our state capitol. My wife is descendants of those two men. And the Texas paid them in land, 3 million acres, which came to be the XIT Ranch. That's the largest ranch ever under one fence.
Right.
And so, you know, she is a descendant of the people who was responsible for coming to Texas's rescue when we were broke and needed to replace our capital, and we were proud of that.
I bet you are. I bet you are. You have a tremendous family history, and by this video, people now will know it. You can give this tape, as we said, to your friends and relatives. If you think of something you forgot next week, call us up and we'll reshoot it for you. Mr. Cable can edit it in. I have to say, it's really been my pleasure.
Thank you
For
very
you to sit
much.
down
I
with us
appreciate
today.
the opportunity to do it.
All right. On behalf of the Heritage Museum of Montgomery County, I'm Butch Bateman, and we hope you enjoy this discussion of the way things used to be in Montgomery County. Good day.